what is anger? It tells us when our boundaries are crossed, right? That's what it's there for. That's why it's a message and an arrow. It tells us what to do and where to go. So what boundaries are you feeling are crossed? Are you feeling like you're not sure how to speak with your kids? Are you feeling like they're taking advantage of you? Do you feel like you are over responding and so you're angry with yourself and you're crossing your own boundary? Like you're feeling annoyed at yourself. Like it could be them, it could be you. So anger first, like what is it trying to tell you? And then with their anger, if you could see, this is the thing about, the best predictor of a child's well-being as a parent self-understanding is that if you understand your anger, you can talk to them about theirs. You can talk to them about, I get really angry when, and you can tell them your story about, I get really angry when I feel like I'm not heard, or I get really angry when I have to repeat something, or I get really angry when I feel like I'm working real hard and nobody notices. And then you can talk to them about their anger so they can be more thoughtful and knowledgeable. And you may say, well, they're 8 and 11. These things take time. Like telling a kid or helping a kid with their self-awareness doesn't shift their behavior immediately.
Heck no.
It's a building block. And so what you're doing is instead of just letting it go or getting into a yelling relationship with them or breaking your connection with them because you're constantly frustrated, you're putting in some bricks. It's a building block to help them understand themselves. So by the time their brain really starts developing, they're taking all those things into account.
Well, and they're learning from you one way or another. They're either learning from you on how to express anger from a place that creates more problems or express anger from a place that reduces problems.
And just to even say to your kids, your boys, anger can be really uncomfortable, can it?
Yeah.
And also to help them differentiate, again, you're raising boys, between anger and other feelings.
Well, and don't forget, anger can sometimes feel good.
Right?
Interesting.
A release.
Letting it out.
Mm-hmm.
So last thing.
But before you play another clip, anger, it can also be a mask for sadness, embarrassment, frustration, fear. So especially with your boys who in society, typically, gender specifically, men can use anger.
We are encouraged to use anger more than any other emotion.
Correct. And so if you can help them kind of slice that up a little bit, so they know they can have access to other emotions as well. So, the way I'll leave this with you, Mom, before Todd plays something is any kind of experience like this that you're having is an opportunity. It's a doorway. Do we like it? No, of course not.
And are you going to do it perfect every time?
No.
Heck no.
But it's a door. It's like, okay, I get to look at my anger. I get to look at my adolescence. I get to look at them. I get to learn about brain science, and I get to talk to them about feelings.
Breathe in the air, sweetie.
Don't
be afraid to care.
No
way, man. That's by Pink Floyd. Dave, Roger, and the guys. Speaking of the guys, I am listening to 2 different podcasts right now. One of them is that witchcraft thing, J.K. Rowling, and the other is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia podcast.
Wow, 2 very different.
You cannot come up with 2 more different podcasts to listen to. And maybe at some point, Cathy and I might in the future talk about this J.K. Rowling thing, but not yet. We're not ready.
No, not ready.
Okay, so the title of today's podcast is Nurturing Our Kids' Spiritual Growth and Self-Understanding. Where are we going with this?
So Todd and I have this opportunity to do this interview. I think we're doing it today with another podcast. So they asked us, and it's a more spiritual podcast. It's like Cathy old school, like Cathy, like 10 years ago, 20 years ago when we first started.
Are you saying you're no longer spiritual?
No,
sweetie?
I am. I'm all those things, but it's the books and the things that she was talking about. I was like, oh, that used to, I was actually just talking to my daughter about this. I am still all those things, but I'm older and the world has shifted me into different directions. And so it's not that I let go of those things. I just don't talk about them.
You brought them with you.
I brought them with me. Absolutely. They're rolling in to every other aspect of who I am. I just used to be, if you look back at our shows and I don't even know if you can anymore, like the 100 level, 200 level.
You can go to our website. That's the way to do it. But you can't do it on Spotify or iTunes or anything like that.
I bet at least 1 out of 3 podcasts from the first 3 years of our show was about some kind of spiritual growth, a book I was reading about self-help, which I still do, but it was just deeper. It was like, not deeper. What's the word? It was more intense, right?
Can you give any examples?
That I'd be reading like 3 self-help books at a time. I wasn't paying attention to the news. I wasn't as involved in politics. I was involved in my own spiritual and personal growth.
Well, who's the authors that our interviewer threw out to you that you
she threw out Wayne Dyer, which is an obvious one. That was my first intro when I was 16. She threw out Eben Alexander, which was a guy that had a near-death experience. He was a neurosurgeon himself and then had a near-death experience. So he understood what was going on in the brain. And I just remember his book. I remember all of the interviews. I remember his story, which then led me to Jill Bolte Taylor. I was thinking about her and her stroke of insight, where she had a stroke on one side of her brain and, experience what it's like to not have our more linear, way of thinking and to just be right brainers. And then that led me to all these other super soul things. I was just thinking about how, I bet if I were to look at my syllabus, because I've been teaching college students now for 11 years. If I looked at my syllabus from the first couple of years versus now, it would represent the difference in where I am.
It's the way it's supposed to be.
Exactly. I'm still teaching social work and all of those kind of things, but what are my examples? What are my books I'm suggesting? And I have, because of the way the world has gone and because of the age of my children and because of who I am, you just evolve. I like the word evolve because it's not about that I've changed. I'm just rolling it.
So when I see that we're going to title this Nurturing Our Kids' Spiritual Growth and Self-Understanding, let's just focus on spiritual growth.
Yeah.
So for me, what does that mean? I mean, there's volumes of books written about what spirituality means, right? And then there's a whole faith-based religious thing, which we're not really talking about right now. A lot of people
will say religious dogmatic because spirituality can be faith-based.
Of course. I don't know. When I think of spiritual, I think of, and I believe in spirituality, but I think Cathy's lens is a little bit more clear than mine. When I think of spirituals, I think I was somebody before I showed up. I think I'm going to be somebody after I pass on. And my hope is that I kind of grow and do whatever it is that I'm supposed to do on this earth. And, other people are like, no, you're here when you show up and then you die when you pass on. And that's fine. A lot of people believe a lot of different things, but I think of who was Todd before Todd even showed up, and that may not really connect to spiritual growth, but it's the opposite of what I'm comfortable with. What I'm comfortable with: logical, practical, science, objectivity, and with spiritual, it's a little bit
it's uncertain.
It's so uncertain. So anyways,
well, and I'm a little more uncomfortable with I'm a little more comfortable with uncertainty and mystery, because I think that's really what it's all about. Because, one of my baseline understandings, because it resonated so deeply, which if something resonates super, super, super deeply, it's not just about verifying your point. It's about, I think that it's something, you just know. And when
without having read it in a book, you just
know, you're like, yes, that just feels so correct to me. And Joseph Campbell said that our human brains don't hold the capacity or ability to access life and death. We don't have the hardwiring and to really know for sure. So what that means to me is we get to live in the mystery and the hints of it. It doesn't mean we don't get the hints of it and the connections and the feelings and the heart what's the word? The heart connections. We know, but we can never fully know. That's what I love about it.